Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Apocrypha Apocalypse. I'm Gary Machuda. And I thought we would do an experiment today, a thought experiment that I think would help put to lie something that has been bandied about a little bit concerning the Council of Trent. Some Protestant apologists have suggested that perhaps the issue of whether or not there is a distinction that could have been made at the Council of Trent where the Deuterocanon could have been labeled as not being able to confirm doctrine, to be Apocrypha in some sense, was a live issue at Trent, and that Trent could have adopted it, but decided not to treat it. And so it was an issue that was never officially decided by the church or by the council. Now, we've done a previous video. We looked at the Acts of Trent, we looked at the diaries and the letters of Trent, and we examined the issue from a different perspectives and shown that no, that's not true, that it was very clear that the decree was meant to affirm these as authoritative canonical scriptures. Now, as time went on, I started doing this project, which I'm going to share with you, and I came up with yet another way in which you could show that this simply was not an option for the Council Fathers. And it gives a very good explanation why when a few of them wished to adopt Jerome's distinction and put it into the decree, well, it was pretty much dead on arrival. And so that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to do a thought experiment, and we're going to look at an alternative universe where what would happen if Trent had actually put Jerome's distinction into its decree and declared that the Deuterocanonical books were Apocrypha, good to be read, but can't be used to confirm doctrine. So that's what we're going to look at. So fasten your seatbelts, folks, because the Apocrypha Apocalypse is beginning right now. Well, there's been a lot of things that's been going on behind the scene. William Albrecht and myself have both been doing some deep dives into data, coming up some really cool information that we're going to have in future videos here on the channel. One thing I want to share with you is a project I've been working on for the past 3 weeks, and that's kind of why it's been a little slow rolling out videos and things like that, is because this is a huge project. And I'm nearing completion, but I'm certainly not done. What I wanted to do was I wanted to go through a compendium of church councils and authoritative decrees known as simply as Mancy. And that, of course, is the editor of this book series on the councils of the church. Mancy is kind of like the Ming. The Ming in early church fathers, as you know, is several hundred volumes. It's a comprehensive, although pre-critical compilation of early church writings and early church fathers. And what Mancy is kind of the Ming, but it focuses specifically on councils, papal decrees, or other authoritative pronouncements. And so Mancy is frequently cited by theologians who are doing research in the early councils of the church, history of dogma, that type of thing. You'll simply see references to Mancy. You'll give a volume number and page number. And there are other ones as well, Harduin, and even Ming is often referred, and so on and so forth. It's huge. It's a multi-volume set. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to start with the Council of Trent and work my way backwards through church history to see how the councils and their authoritative deliberations and decrees, how and whether they use the Deuterocanonical books to confirm doctrine, to argue doctrine, to express dogma, okay? And so what I did was I went backwards, going through it, and it took me a long time to do manually with my eye going through. It's all in Latin, so or Latin and Greek, depending on what text is being used. And I went through it and completed it. However, now I'm going to take another at least a couple of months before I actually have a finished product. So I need to find out whether my translation is correct, whether I identified all the text correctly, and also especially whether the Mancy's text stands up to later critical editions of these texts. So it's going to be a massive project, probably take even more than a couple months. Okay. While I was doing this project, a thought occurred to me, and that is, as I'm going backwards through history, council by council, and so on and so forth, it occurred to me how deep and how wide the conciliar official use of these texts, the Deuterocanonical texts, stem throughout church history. And so what I want to do in this program, I just want to go through my preliminary findings and just show you the length and breadth of these use of the Deuterocanon in official decrees, councils, and deliberations. So this is not, I mean, they might include some sermons, but by and large, these are theological discussions. And I want you to see how much of the Deuterocanon is used. So I'm going to share the screen right now, and here's my preliminary findings from Mancy. And let's just take a bird's eye view. Again, like I said, the specifics, because I am not done with the project. I don't want anybody to take anything from these texts and think of it as solid as gold, but rather, I just want you to get the overall view. And I think it's accurate enough to get that overall picture. And then we'll go back to our thought experiment and see whether the Council of Trent really could legitimately have called the Deuterocanonical books mere human apocrypha. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen here. And as you can see at the top, you have Trent. By the way, what I did was councils, I highlight in orange, I underline ecumenical councils, and papal decrees are in white. So moving from Trent, we have the 18th Ecumenical Council of Lateran V in 1512. Lo and behold, we see formal introductions and use of the Book of Wisdom. The Council of Sens, a local council. Then we have the councils of Basel, Ferrara, Florence, which took place from 1431 to 1449. Long before the Council of Trent, long before the Protestant Reformation, it's an ecumenical council. And now check this out. So here's what I found in Mancy. Okay, I'm just going to scroll. Now, the stuff that's highlighted in yellow are formal introductions. So you can see Judith being cited, wisdom being cited. These are used to confirm doctrine. These are used to argue various aspects of, between the theologians and hammering out the decrees of the Council of Florence is basically how it's referred to. But if you want to be formal, it's really Basil, Ferrara, Florence. So as you can see here, you have Sirach, you have Wisdom, you have Tobit, you have Judith. You even have Daniel being cited. And you have 1st and 2nd Maccabees being used as well. All authoritative. You see all the formal quotations. It's called prophet, called it is written. It's scripture, and we're not even done with Florence. Look at all these. All 7 deuterocanonical books are authoritatively used to confirm doctrine at Florence, including Deutero-Daniel. Next, we have the Council of Constance in 1413, 2nd Maccabees, 1st Maccabees, Sirach, Wisdom is being used. And it's also used formally and explicitly as scripture. Then we have local councils coming up. You see here, Council of Reims of 1408, Council of Denmark in 1275, Exeter, 1287. Moving back in history, back, we come to Council of Lateran IV in 1215. Sirach quoted with "it is written." Also the Maccabees being used, Wisdom being used. Several papal documents, using Baruch, Wisdom, Sirach, local councils. Again, now we're coming to the turn of the 1st millennium. Moving back, Synod of Mainz in 888. Let's see. Council of Constantinople in 879. This is the Eighth Ecumenical Council. Look at all the deuterocanonical books formerly used. The Divine Scripture says. Another thing too, by the way, is I also found that they use proto and deuterocanonical books together, often back to back, without any qualification or distinction whatsoever. So again, showing that they didn't see a distinction in terms of authority. So now we're going into the 9th century, okay? 9th century documents. Papal document, Council of Paris 6 and 829, repeatedly used Sirach, wisdom, and so on, Tobit. Nicaea 2, Ecumenical Council, 787. Once again, here we have it. It is written over and over again. Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, especially the 3rd chapter of Baruch, which is very important because that's the prophecy that Christ would be seen on earth and converse with men in Baruch 3:38. Council of Constantinople 3 in 862, the 6th Ecumenical Council. Repeated citations, explicit citations, formal citations. Constantinople 2, 638, 5th Ecumenical Council. So we cite multiple quotations from Wisdom, Baruch, and Sirach. Going back again, more papal decrees that also use deuterocanonical books, or Mizdas and so on. Council of Sardinia, 521. Very important Second Council of Orange, where they went against Pelagian heresy. Now, this was approved by the Pope. It's also used in Trent, by the way. And look at here. It says, this is Pelagian, who contradicts the prophet, saying, and then it quotes from Wisdom 2. Interesting enough. Here we have the Ecumenical Council of Chalcedon, or Chalcedon, depending on how you pronounce it. Again, have you not heard what is written? And it quotes Sirach, wisdom, over and over again. Here's Council of Ephesus, extremely important council, 431, quoting Baruch repeatedly, Sirach, more Baruch 3, a lot of wisdom going on and on. Then we have Laporius's Confession of the Catholic Faith, a very important confession, anti-Pelagian profession. In North Africa, you have the Council of Carthage in June of 411. This is where the African Code. Now, notice the African Code is found in Mansi right there. But notice, even within the deliberations of this council, you still have citations from the Deuterocanon. Same thing's true with the decree in Council of Rome 2 and 382. Damasus himself uses them. Council of Valence, moving on. Synod of Egypt, this is with Athanasius. You have, of course, a quotation of scripture from the Deuterocanonical books. The Council of Alexandria in 321 uses Sirach formally as scripture. Council of Antioch 269. Also, it is written, quote, Sirach 9, the Ecumenical Council of Nicaea 325. This part I'm going to have to look into because I'm not really sure what this is, because I know that we don't have the acts of the council. I believe these are just letters that have survived from people within the council. But as you can see, a lot of use of Baruch 3 at Nicaea, or discussions surrounding Nicaea. And that's it. So that's our little walk through history through Mansi. Now, like I said, you have to take all this with a grain of salt. Mansi's not the updated critical editions of these works, but it is comprehensive. I think even assuming that some of this is pseudepigraphic, nevertheless, I think there's enough information. It's such a wide survey. It does give us a feel for whether or not these books were used in councils, whether they were used authoritative, and whether or not these books were used as fully canonical works. And the answer is obviously yes, they were. Often within councils, even ecumenical councils, use these authoritatively with formal citations, using to confirm doctrine over and over again throughout church history. Okay, Let's go to our thought experiment for today. What if in some alternative universe, Trent had gone the other way? And instead of affirming the Deuterocanon as authoritative canonical scripture without any distinction or qualification as to their authority in regards to the proto-canon, what if it went the other way and said that these books can't be used to confirm doctrine, that they're just there for, I don't know, edification? What would, in this alternative universe, Protestants be saying about the Council of Trent? Well, I think that's pretty obvious. I think if I were a Protestant in this alternative universe, I would be accusing Trent of committing a horrible error, demonstrating that it was not infallible and that this couldn't possibly be the way God is meant to deliver true doctrine to his people. Why? Because Trent, in this alternative universe where Trent would actually reject the Deuterocanon, it would have invalidated all the books that were used throughout church history in councils, in authoritative documents that touch on doctrine, would have invalidated all these texts that we just saw. And so obviously this could not have been a council of God, because how could a council of God nullified all the deliberations of every council in history? So either none of the councils are infallible, or they're not authoritative, or Trent wasn't infallible, but the other ones were by using these books. Now, again, that's from that alternative universe standpoint. So I hope I'm not losing anybody on this thought experiment. And I think what this shows is it was not a live option at the Council of Trent to introduce any kind of distinction in these books. It had to affirm them completely and fully as canonical, capable of confirming doctrine. Because even if the few fathers that argue for it, even if they were able to persuade the fathers of Trent, there's just no way they would have put that in the decree. It just, because it would have invalidated all previous councils. It would open a huge can of worms, because you'd have to explain how all these councils we looked at, ecumenical councils, had wrongly used these books, or that these books could have been used in previous councils, but they can no longer be used now. Any way you go, it would be totally ridiculous and absurd. And it would have blew up in the Council of Trent's face to even think about something like that. And quite frankly, that's why when we looked at the Acts and the deliberations at Trent, you can see where it was always a dead issue. It just, the petition never went anywhere in the council. Why? Because there had been for centuries the constant and consistent use of these books, even in councils, even in ecumenical councils, to confirm doctrine, to quote formally, and they hold doctrinal weight, they're authoritative, and to in any way turn their back on that history would have been absurd and really unthinkable. And it was really just these few fathers who were very much indebted to Saint Jerome. They were Jeromist in the extreme. They were the ones that were messed up, because they were putting too much weight on Jerome in church history and missing the big picture, that Jerome is really the outlier. He is the one who, based on his own understanding of the Hebrew text, had rejected these books against the constant use of the church, both in the West and in the East. So anyway, I thought this thought experiment was important enough to put up as a video, just because just looking at this from a bird's eye perspective, it's very clear that when Trent affirmed these books as canonical scriptures, they were standing perfectly in line with the conciliar history of the past. And to do otherwise, I think, would have been unthinkable. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe. And also, by the way, William and I are both on Patreon. We appreciate your support, because your support helps us to obtain material and allow us to get the time to dive in deep into these subjects and make them available for you and everybody else who's interested in the subject. So we truly appreciate your support. And until next time, I hope everybody has a great week. Bye-bye.